Hey everyone, it's Tom Johnson at hirobe and welcome back to our video series. Today we're joined by Brett. Brett's a VP of AEM Engineering at Bounteous, an Adobe Platinum solution partner, and Brett has been with the business since 2008 and has built and led the AEM practice from its infancy just 5 short years ago. I think many of you will know Brett in the industry and seen Bounteous around. And obviously they're a very highly recognized and successful business within the Adobe platform world. And so I wanted to invite Brett here today to tell us a little bit about that journey, how they've been so successful, and a little bit of an insight into that. So Brett, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly happy to be here. As you mentioned, we started our Adobe practice, 5 short years ago with a handful of folks internally that we could barely spell AEM. And, we started organically for a bit. So we had some experience there. Then after we were maybe around a dozen or so people, we did an acquisition, which is pretty common in this line of business. And it's something that many people are going to encounter as they're growing their teams. So we did an acquisition overnight, basically tripled our AEM team and brought together 2 teams that were successful in their own right. And that has its own share of challenges. And we worked through that. And then since then, we've doubled the practice, more than doubled it again. So really, if you go back to Bounteous Classic or Infield Digital Classic, those folks are just a fraction of our current practice today. So there again, yet more different things that we had to work through. So though I'll never say that we've done everything perfectly here at Bounteous, in terms of growing a successful practice, we've been through a lot of the same steps that anybody that's looking to grow a practice is going to have to go through. So, we can certainly help out and offer our perspective on what has worked for us. And
absolutely.
With that, I would say what hasn't worked, but frankly, a lot of it is as we hit those things, especially acquisitions, like that's always one of those interesting situations. Like, okay, well, hey, we put a couple people together. How do we work through these things?
Absolutely.
But all good challenges, all good people challenges, and we've developed a pretty happy family here. I'm pretty proud of.
Absolutely, and I think one thing that I wanted to touch on as well, and that you ultimately touched on with the acquisition side, is there are a lot of businesses in this space that are trying to scale, trying to grow. It's a very competitive field and a very interesting field as well for a lot of reasons. But I think I would love to ultimately understand how you have been so successful and the challenges you have overcome along the way, because another point that we'll get onto as well is that a lot of your team is remote, which is really valuable for, I suppose, definitely the current times. So, are you able to share a little bit about kind of how you have built out that team and been successful on that side?
Sure, absolutely. And I know you recently did a recording with Ted Reeves, and there was some discussion around the challenges sometimes in the area of Adobe hiring, and it's not quite as big a pool as other technologies that you're looking to hire for. It's not something that anybody can just pick off the shelf on themselves and teach themselves and learn and then go into the field. They kind of have to get into a company that does it already. And a lot of the projects when you're running, it's hard to bring those folks along if they don't already know AEM. So, a little bit of HR 101, keeping your team is obviously the biggest way you need to, when you're looking to grow a team, rule number 1 is don't lose the team as you're bringing them in. And so things like having a healthy and excited workforce, and not even thinking of it as a workforce, but as a team, a true team. And there's a lot of pieces that we can dig into there. But it's just not optional in the AEM space. There's too many people. The reality, the fact of the matter is, well, number 1, Tom wouldn't exist if it was easy to hire in this area. And number 2, people are trying to hire your people every single day in this area. I have no doubt that every single person on my team is getting recruited on a weekly basis. So it's absolutely, you're going to need to compensate people correctly, but that's just the entry fee to get into building a team in the AEM space. You're really going to have to figure out how you can go above and beyond and make sure that you're actually doing it. So like, it's interesting here at Bounteous, we apply for, and we've won many of these best place to work, and we've got a 95 or 94% retention rate. So like, it's easy to read our press clippings and it'd be like, we're great. We're a great place. Look, they told us we're a great place to work. We've got a paper that says we're a great place to work. it's got to go deeper than that. It's not about just, hey, throw a bunch of talent and culture events at people, give them a bunch of benefits, give them a bunch of, put slides in the buildings and all that stuff. Well, that's right now, it's obviously not even applicable. But I mean, there's a lot of things that can make it seem like you're doing a good job. But, looking at that next level deeper of like, do we actually have a healthy work environment, or do we just have a few people here that are filling out the survey the right way that make it seem like it is, but maybe there's a little bit of rottenness underneath. That stuff's got to get rooted out when you're building an AEM practice.
Absolutely. And I know when we originally looked at putting this kind of call together, it was something that was really valuable at the moment, not just for people in the Adobe space, but also across any business that's looking to scale ultimately. So I think from that side, you've mentioned that it's been a process, and I suppose, are there any challenges that, and I get it, like you said, you're not saying that you do it perfect, you do it incredibly well. And I've attended and seen some of your external recruitment videos that you put out there, and they're always put together so well in terms of kind of internally, but that's been something that you've built up over time. And almost, what was the process? When did you kind of realize that you needed to put some more time into that?
I mean, basically right away. I mean, like I said, we got into the industry with a handful of folks internally. We had an awesome opportunity from a client that we had worked with in the past. Said, hey, we know you guys don't know anything about AEM, but we trust you to build it. And we had a hell of an opportunity. We had to take it. But as soon as we finished that, and you finish your first project, you got one team, that basically can do AEM. And eventually we had two teams, around 10 people. Boy, does that makes this type of work really hard. I mean, generally speaking, the AEM space, you get a project, they're not 2 months, 2 months of two people. They're generally 6-9 month projects of a handful, a good chunk of folks. And so you run into this feast or famine of everybody's busy and then everybody's on the bench. Unless you have continuation work, which is a very important thing that you need to do. But as you start, getting into that situation, you're starting to bid new work, and it's like, oh boy, how are we going to do this work? It's not just, hey, schedule sell a job, and then 1 or 2 months later have a staff to do it. If you don't have your hiring wheel going, I mean, really your only options are going to be in the short term to go ahead and find some professionals in the area such as Tom that can hire immediately. And maybe you wouldn't want to necessarily do that for your whole force, but you're going to need a few leads on your project to be able to be successful in that project. Because rule number 2, so rule number 1, don't lose your people. Rule number 2 in this space is don't fail a project. If you ever find yourself on the end of a project that gets out into the public in terms of the client's unhappy, Adobe's unhappy, it's such a small space in AEM, you're not going to be able to hide. You really have to make sure that every single project that you do comes off extremely successfully. And so it's a little bit of a challenge because you got to have the right people, and you got to balance that with not getting overly heavy and hiring a bunch of people to your bench. So like, as you're a small team, it's a little bit of a challenge. So we knew right away that we had to figure out, how do we do this effectively in ways that aren't just, hey, go to the shelf and get some people, because it's just not possible in AEM. And so we've approached that a few different ways. Of course, we've got our own hiring folks. There's definitely times where we've needed to call in the hirers, the recruiters, to get somebody in quick. And then you also at the same time need to play the long game. And this is something that I'm pretty proud of. We've been able to get rolling in the AEM practice here at Bounteous, is a full-on training program where we're able to bring in folks that are fresh out of school. That's something that traditionally in the agency environment is not always the easiest thing in the world. A lot of times it's very easy to say, you know what, no, we need to get senior AEM developers right off the shelf that can hit the ground running. But there's some super awesome talent coming right out of school that you can train up to become AEM developers, and train them the right way, like right off the bat. And they could be at a really good spot because they've not learned any bad habits. They've got a lot of energy. They're excited to be in the workforce. And the other piece of that too is if you're looking to build diversity into your teams, diversity is a hot topic right now for very, very valid reasons, right? In the AEM space, I'm going to tell you, it's not very diverse. And I won't say what people groups make it up mostly, but it's not not a ton.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking to build a truly diverse workforce, it's one thing to talk about it. It's in vogue to talk about it, right? It's another thing to actually invest and actually do it. And I tell you, an apprenticeship program where you're training folks up fresh out of school is an amazing way where you can give opportunities to folks that haven't otherwise had those opportunities. So
Absolutely.
that's another way that we've done it. And so you kind of play all the games at the same time, ride all the rides, because you're going to want to have those pipelines constantly producing it if you're looking to grow your team at a reasonable pace. We like I said, we've grown pretty quickly in the 5 years that we've done it. You certainly don't have to go at that pace, but I will say, like, there comes a point you probably at least want to get 20, 30 people if you want to be able to comfortably run a practice long term without having this big drop offs and then trying to find somebody for the next project.
Absolutely. And that ultimately leads quite nicely into, I suppose, the next topic where we wanted to go. But you mentioned about and I actually shouted you out, really wasn't planned to be in the video with Tad, about the training side, that you were being really successful in that space. And that's something that, again, I think from business side, you have to have your culture tied down. You have to be on it with how you're treating people, because it's going to be out there that there's a big fear for businesses that if I invest so much in training these people up in such a lucrative and competitive market, they're just going to leave and I'm going to supply the next business that's coming onto that. So, I mean, what are some of the ways that you've built sort of a healthy and excited team in order to scale and keep that?
No, you're 100% right, Tom. It is a very valid concern, but it's also something that people shouldn't be afraid of to the point of not doing it.
Of course.
But it's like my dad always told me, like, when I used to do roofing projects with him, I used to be in construction when I was a kid, and you don't want to fear ladders to the point that you're going to like be unsafe on them, but you do want to fear them enough that you're going to force yourself to be safe on them.
Yeah.
And so there's that healthy balance of like knowing that this is not an option. Things like having an actual healthy work-life balance. It's very tempting in this industry, in agency industry, or a field, I should say, that where we play, you're battling against other agencies. It's very easy to sell projects for lower than they're really going to take and put that all on the dev team. The dev team just crunches it out. We've all been on those projects. If we're in this industry, we know there's a work hazard there, that there's times where we've got to ramp up 50, 60 hours a week to get a project done. And if that is the norm for your projects at your company, that is going to be real tough to maintain an AEM competency, because again, those people, your best people, are going to start looking for areas where they can actually do this job and do it in a way that can be done healthy. And I'll tell you, it can be done. It does start from the BD perspective, and making sure that your business development team's on board with selling projects in a healthy way. And then managers in your competency. And again, this is probably outside of AEM as well. This isn't just AEM specific, but it's extra important in AEM. Making sure we're monitoring projects, making sure that we're not going regularly over, 45 hours or so. I mean, most people can maintain 45 hours if they so choose. But once you start hitting 50 hours regularly, it's something that needs to be looked into. I always tell people it's something that can be the exception, but it can't be the plan. If we're doing it the last 2 weeks of a project, no problem. That happens. We've all been there. If we're doing it 3 weeks, with 3 months to go in the project, like, that's a problem. I think we need to handle this a different way. So that's, one area. Another area, it's kind of interesting, it was brought to my attention, was, something that it's very easy to, in the AEM space and many other technology spaces, you've got architects, you've got developers, and you've got junior developers. You've got tech leads maybe that you'd say are maybe more effective than your standard developers. And making sure that you're not valuing people differently. Now, this isn't to say that you're not compensating them differently. There's the idea of the business value that they bring to the table. And obviously people get compensated according to that. But in terms of not making little clicks in your AEM competencies. So like, for instance, at Bounteous, we've got a Slack channel. It's got everybody in it. And when we create a Slack channel for, let's say, some of the principal architects, we don't create that as a little private group. So we have our little private club where we make all the decisions for the competency. Now, we still purposely invite the principal architects to the channel. We try to keep the chat in there to keep things organized and keep people that don't care about the conversation. They don't have to be in it if they're in the normal AEM channel, but we still let people know, like, hey, we've got this channel over here. We've got nothing to hide. These people aren't better than the other people. They're not more important. They're people. And so there's some very subtle ways where it's easy to start treating people differently based on their business value. And that won't resonate, obviously, with your folks.
Yep.
So again, as much as you could treat people as people, and I think, if we talk about some of the remote working, I mean, that's really where a lot of this ends up going as well, is doing the work and execution. In some ways, is the least of your worries. I mean, I shouldn't say that. It's table stakes. You have to do that piece, right? But there's like some very programmatic ways of doing that. I think the people part of the puzzle is definitely the more interesting part. I know there was one time I hired somebody and they had a short stint at another agency. And of course, I'm going to ask, because I don't want that to be what happens here. I'm like, hey, what happened here? And this person started going through, and of course, I'm not going to name the agency. But he's like, I went to work there. Everybody I worked with was phenomenal, but we all went to work, we did our work, and we all went home, and nobody cared about each other. And that is way more important than you might think it is in this industry, especially as we're all working remote. That ability to connect people and value and love people equally, regardless of what their position is. So that was just a couple things in terms of just the people side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I don't want to take this down a route from my side, but I know that I watched a really interesting video recently with Google, and that was about how they hire and how they go down that route. And ultimately, I've been a strong believer in this for a long time, that hiring is ultimately the most important thing that a business can do. And that's probably rich coming from a recruiter that makes a living off kind of hiring people. But ultimately, it's really impossible to grow without the right people and having the ability to keep them people. And
you're not wrong, Tom.
So I think there was kind of two things we wanted to move on, but it segues nicely into the remote working side. So we did say this is more relevant than ever. The remote work is really there for a lot of businesses, and we come across businesses that it can be a challenge, it can be an opportunity, whether that they've had to tackle this and they've been thrown, as many people have been thrown into remote working. And companies now we're a year in and we've had to find the new norm. And of course, there'll be businesses that go back to doing it in the office and doing that side. But I'd love to understand, I suppose, your view, because I know in your own personal situation, you're not based in an office, you're not on the doorstep of an office. So what's your theory around remote working and the culture of that at Bounteous?
Yeah, I mean, great question. In Bounteous, we got plenty of offices, and they'll reopen at some point. And there's absolutely people that would love to be back in an office. So I don't want to downplay that an office can be a phenomenal place to get people together. But you're right. We're in a situation right now where it's just not feasible, not possible. How do we do that? Well, as you mentioned, I've been in Green Bay, which is 4 hours from our nearest office. And I think, that alone is a little bit telling in terms of the opportunity that's been afforded to me at a company where I'm not near an office. I'm not treated differently. So, I mean, that kind of alludes to some of the things that we'll talk about, but, it goes back to what I said before. It really is, how do we humanize people? Because if we take a step back, working from home can be some of the absolute most efficient way to get work done, at least if you're talking the area that I play in, the technical part of this, where it's architects, developers, banging out implementation code. I mean, I remember used to be where I would go on site as a developer and I would literally estimate getting half the amount of work done as what I was going to get in my home office. So a home office and remote work can be phenomenally efficient. It can also be phenomenally polarizing, or I want to say, like, I mean, you can become a hermit. I mean, you could live in your house and not leave your house for weeks on end. And eventually just kind of be detached from the world and certainly coworkers. And how do we get beyond that? And I think first off, this make sure you think of your people the right way. People aren't just employees. They're not just your coworkers, and God forbid they are not resources. They are people. And we talked about this. I don't need to hit that anymore in terms of, treating people the same. But I think getting to know and love your coworkers at a personal level. Do they have to be your absolute best friends in the world? No, but I mean, they should at least be, we should at least enjoy them. I always tell people we spend half of our waking life with people that we work with. Shouldn't they at least be in our circle of people that we enjoy? And so I think there's ways that you can foster that and make that, you know, it doesn't have to be a bunch of extra programs and a bunch of extra time in the day. Now, there's a time and place for that, you know, like certainly talent and culture will throw a bunch of, you know, hey, we're going to have trivia night that night. If you want to join, feel free. We're going to have a bake off, you know, we're going to take, you know, some TV show and make a knockoff version. And talent and culture at Bounteous does a lot of that stuff. But if that's all you're doing, I want to caution, I call it bread and circus. It's kind of an old Roman thing where they kind of threw all the bread and circus at the general populace, and meanwhile the culture was starting to rot. The same thing can happen if all it is talent, culture, HR programs that are coming in. It needs to be more. One of the things that we'll do here at Bounteous is we have something called Donut Buddies, and this isn't unique to us. I think we actually got a program online that helps us do this via Slack. So it's not like we came up with this, but it's just an idea to get your coworkers together, the people that are working, your team members, and have them on a monthly basis spend half hour to meet each other and talk about not work things. You know, simple things like that you can bake in. Now, there's only so much of that you're going to be able to do. Like we're still here to get work done, right? Like, so there's a reality of that. But you can build so much interaction into your daily work habits that is just useful time. You know, like most projects, when you're doing agile development, you're going to have daily meetings for status. Well, make sure you're doing them via Zoom. You know, make sure that you know, when you're doing coaching meetings, for instance, like we set up one-on-one coaching, like those should be at least weekly or bi-weekly. Make sure that those are face-to-face via Zoom. You know, one of the biggest things too is it might seem like a little thing if your culture isn't this way, but cameras on. I mean, there is so many times where, I mean, phones are obsolete. You can do voice just as well via Zoom, but nothing. I mean, there's so much translated with facial expressions, a smile that shows that you're happy to see somebody. These are the little things that they add up over time. And it's amazing. Like, let's say your company doesn't quite have that culture yet. You need to find a few people that are on board with it. And you'd be amazed if one person turns their camera on in a meeting, all of a sudden everybody will turn their cameras on. And we're not going to be dogmatic, but we don't say you're required to put your camera on, but we will encourage people to put their camera on. You know, so for instance, we have like a weekly meeting with the entire AEM competency, and we'll have dozens of people on that meeting. You know, if we notice that some cameras aren't on, we'll quick encourage people to turn the cameras on. It makes a big difference for people to start getting to know each other. It's not one big home run you need to hit. It's the little things where you can build it into your daily routines, that it's just the norm that you have these types of conversations. I feel like I talk to my coworkers all the time. I don't live anywhere near them, you know, but I do talk to them face to face via Zoom all the time. So it's not really, you know, there's ways to make the remote thing not actually feel all that remote. And then when you do need to put your head down and get work done, you can. Yeah,
we're a big advocate for that, absolutely. And video is something that we use day in, day out. We have one meeting in the morning, every morning, and then an afternoon meeting. And that's really just to catch up. Talk about what we've done throughout the day, what we've achieved, what's going on for the next day. And I think that is really important for a lot of businesses out there, that it's not only from kind of the video side as well, as it keeps you engaged. I think as a person on the video, you're a lot more likely to be engaged, that you're not going to be sat there on your phone looking away from the camera if you know people can see you. And it's not a tactic to make sure that people are working, but engagement is a lot higher, obviously, with the video side of it. So I think that
I just want to say, like, I absolutely agree. Like, the temptation is always there to be working during meetings. And I challenge people, if you don't have your camera on, there's sometimes where you're just not going to be able to help yourself. Oh, I'm just going to quick answer this email. I'm going to quick answer this text. You know, I don't know if I'm sure there's plenty of people that are better at multitasking like me, and I think I can do it. If I like answer something for 30 seconds on Slack during a meeting, that 30 seconds of that meeting, I don't know. Hopefully they didn't call on me. Absolutely. I think it's a good point that sometimes it's good for us to turn our videos on just to hold ourselves accountable to the people we're talking, especially if we're doing a one-on-one. I mean, if you're in a one-on-one, get your hands off the keyboard. Like, people know, focus on that person as if you were in the room with that person.
Absolutely. And it's always a big thing of mine, and people get pulled up on it, and it's never nice to have yourself pulled up on it. But yeah, I think it's definitely accountability side of it. And that again segues quite nicely into various things that you've discussed. It's all the little things that add up. And I think something that you've said that stuck with me for a long time is at Bounteous, you've got a real culture of excellence. You want to be the best. And that's not in, and I know you always say this, and I'll let you say that on your own side, but you want to make the most of everyone that you've got, not from a bad way in the sense that you're pushing people. It's the sense that you really want to encourage people to be the best that they can be and deliver on the best. And I think it'd be great to discuss your advice to a business or a team or an individual even, I suppose, how you make the most of it and how you've kind of built that culture.
Sure. I think there's two sides of this, and I'd be curious if we want to go into both sides or if we want to start in one and then go to the other. I think there's the practical blocking and tackling part of this. How do you actually foster a team in a way? Because there's a lot of pitfalls to fall into in this area because the work is tough. And it's very easy to fall into patterns that are going to give you short-term success at the expense of your long-term. So there's the actual, like, how do we do this on a day-to-day basis? And then there's the mentality that backs it up, that actually makes this possible. And you need both. And so I guess I'm curious, which way do you want to go with this, Tom?
I mean, it's a good one. I'd love to cover both. And I think since we will be, the likelihood is we're going to snip this into little parts. Let's definitely talk about both. Let's talk about the culture first, like the mindset of it, how you build and kind of foster that environment.
Absolutely. I mean, I truly believe, and if you listen to any leadership speakers out there, I know some people are like, I don't listen to that stuff. I know it's all rah rah. There's some key things in there. There's the what you think and what you expect is how you make those things reality. And I tell you, part of it is just being the best as the expectation. It's not even like a bar that we're trying to reach. You're like, no, we're going to be the best. We are the best. We're like, that's who we are, at the company that you are. Like, so when Phil Hollier 12 years ago hired me, this isn't something I came up with. This is something that when he was hiring me, going back to what Tom was saying about like the hiring is so important. In the hiring process, Phil, when we were a tiny little company that nobody ever heard of before, he said in his pitch to hire me, Brett, we're always going to be the best. And frankly, I'd never heard that before from somebody in business. I always kind of thought, well, we're always going to pinch pennies. We're always going to make, what makes the most sense. And we're going to make sure that we're profitable. We're going to make sure we do. And again, you got to do those things in business. Don't get me wrong. But his focus wasn't on that. His focus was, we're going to be the best and everything else is going to work itself out.
Yeah.
And that ever since I've been here, I've had that feeling. And as I run the practice here at Bounteous, I routinely tell people I run the absolute best AEM competency in the world. And now I hope that everybody out there that runs their AEM competencies feels the same way. Yeah. But I don't mean just says it. It's not a mantra. It's not just something that we're going to say and we're going to all sing and say, yep, we're the greatest. Like, no, like really that needs to be at your core. And then that dictates how you act. It dictates who you hire. So in terms of when you're looking for the right people, we're in an industry where it's not about punching the clock. It's about getting a job done. There's a mentality difference, and there's different types of people that work well in one mentality versus another. And if we do this right, it's not, getting a job done doesn't mean, hey, that means you're going to work 50, 60 hours every single week. No, that goes back to some of the things that we were talking about earlier, that you got to make sure you're doing this in the right way. But the mentality needs to be results-oriented people that like, you know what? We are there to make a client successful, and whatever that takes to make that client successful, I'm not doing that for Bounteous. I'm doing that for me. Like I have this in my core that I need to make that client successful. Like those are the types of folks that you're looking for when you're hiring, in addition to having the right skill sets, of course. But if you truly set that expectation of we're going to be the best, you make those hires. It also dictates some of the things that you do as a practice that are hard to justify sometimes in terms of if you're looking at just the dollars and cents in the short term. Things like, hey, you know, if we're going to be the best, we're going to get our name out there as one of the biggest contributors to ACS AEM Commons. Let's say that's your goal. You know, since that's the main open source project in the AEM space. Well, investing features into that open source project is going to cost you time and money. But if you're looking to be the best and you're looking for a team that truly believes they're the best, like it's not just about you as the lead of the practice or whoever you're having lead the practice to believe in that. You need the whole team to believe that team, we're all the best. Every company out there has their couple, one or two rock stars, but does your entire team top to bottom feel like the entire team is rock stars? Well, when you do things like this, contribute as a team to these areas, these are investments. You know, some of the things that we'll talk about in the other path of like, how do we actually grow people up? Again, those are investments, they cost, but when you set the expectation that we're going to be the best, you have to keep moving. You have to keep taking the steps forward. Adobe, AEM, all those things keep moving. You have to keep moving to where that thing is and enabling people to stay there. So, and then lastly, I'll say on this is like, I will tell people this in the hiring process. Bounteous is not a perfect company. Your company, whoever you're not a perfect company. None of us are. And the sooner that you recognize that and are willing to tell your team members we're not a perfect company, and therefore we want your feedback, honestly, and giving them real ways to give it, whether it's through an individual career coach, whether it's through access to the lead of the competency, whether it's access to leaders, like the actual full leadership of the company. There's ways that you can provide feedback mechanisms. There's tools out there that you can use to get that feedback. You know, a lot of times we encourage people to do it non-anonymously because to me it's most productive to actually have face-to-face. Like we're all grown people here. Like it's okay to bring up challenges, like we want to solve them. But even given that opportunity that if they do, that they're only comfortable bringing it up anonymously, so be it. We would rather hear about the problems and try to fix them. Because here too, as you're growing your AEM competency, when you start with 5, 10 people, you're going to have certain types of problems. Once you have 20, 30 people, you're going to have other types of problems. And once you get to 100, you'll have yet different types of problems. So even if you think you've got it all figured out, as you grow, new problems show up because you're just in a new space. So having that feedback mechanism is super important to make sure that people, that you're maintaining that we truly are excellent. And we're not just reading the fact that 2 years ago we were excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's probably a couple of points I take from that as well that ring quite true with me personally, is that I think whenever growing something, I've always felt it's really successful to look at the future picture of if we were going to build the greatest AEM team or AEM competency in the world, what would that look like? And then, like you said, build that backwards. Okay, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do that, and build it out that way, which is phenomenal. And I know I do want to touch on I know we've mentioned it before, not on this video, but the mentor program that you do have, which I think's incredible as well. And the other point that I wanted to say was, I think around I've lost my train of thought a little bit, but on the sort of the hiring process, having the ability to sort of feed that through everyone that you're bringing in and being completely honest about the environment, I think is so important that you can be very honest. And we see this a lot with job adverts that get put out there. Everything's a really exciting opportunity. Everything's fantastic. And actually, for a growing company, it's not going to be. I think it would ring so true. And it goes back, I think it'll be a video done by Simon Sinek. I'm not trying to rip this off. It was an advert that was posted by someone looking for an exploration mission. And it wasn't that he said this was going to be incredible. And I think basically everyone survived this mission and it was really successful. And they just advertised it that they needed people that were willing to work really hard. It was a deadly scenario. The likelihood of coming back was ultimately nil. But if you wanted to take that on, and they had an abundance of applicants, I think being completely honest about the environment breeds that culture of excellence, really.
I think it's very insightful, Tom. I've actually heard that exact same story that you're talking about, and it is funny because like going back to when we were that 5-person crew, and we got brought onto this project where we, like I said, we literally had never touched AEM in the past, and it was hilarious because my manager at the time, I was a developer / architect at the time. I was on this team, and my manager goes, and by the way, if we fail this project, that guy gets fired. and now granted, that guy's not in our company, but like, again, going back to that personal value of I need to make people successful. You tell me if we fail this job, that guy's gonna get fired. Like that was motivation. Like, and we, even as that small group of people, like we were going to take over the world. Like we're looking at all the gigantors out there, and here we are with our little practice. And that's where you're going to be when you start, right? But when that alone can be exciting. Like that could be like, hey, we're going to be the next big thing. Sometimes when you are the big thing, people are less excited to join that. Those guys already made it. Why do people join startups? Because they want to do so. Like it can be exciting, but you're going to need to find people that are, long haulers, right? It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be all fun and games. Some of the toughest parts of leading this practice, I'm not going to lie, they were when we were small, because there's just fundamental challenges of doing some of the things the right way and making sure people are growing when you're trying to also be profitable, trying to be known in the industry. Adobe's got a lot of partners, trying to be a big enough partner that they care to send work your way and they know they can trust you. There's a lot of things when you're small that you do need to be concerned with, and it's just extra special important that you have the right people.
Absolutely. And there's a quote or a kind of a mindset that I'm very fond of, that kind of the solution to your current problem is then the cause of your future problem. That if you're a small business and you need to grow, your issue is that you need to grow. And then when you grow, you've got the issue of managing that growth and tackling that, and everything spirals. It's a never ending journey of just facing the next challenge. And I think as long as you're doing something that you love the challenges and you love solving those problems, then no doubt that's why we see rapid growth from someone like yourselves, that 5 years ago, you're now one of the largest sort of AEM sort of platinum partners out there. So I suppose moving on slightly to the kind of the way that you deliver kind of the culture of excellence, is there anything that you would say, and we're not looking for trade secrets or Bounteous secrets and how you do that, but is there, I know you have the mentor programs, the point that you mentioned about the Slack groups where other people can get involved, not to kind of derail your train of thought, but I think a lot of people would add huge value just being able to see where the thought process of the next level, being able to get access to that and be involved in that. And I'm sure you've probably had some great ideas from people that ultimately wouldn't have been involved in that normally if you close that group off. But I suppose from a practical point of view, how do you kind of implement on that strategy of being the best?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that the answer is going to evolve over time as you start when you're small, and then as you grow larger and you have more opportunity to do these things. And that's one of the things you really got to be. I know we all develop agilely, and we also tout the values of agile, but it's very easy for somebody to kind of, as you're building a group in AEM, to kind of either build their little kingdom and now they want to rule it and be the guy because they were the guy or the gal that did all the things. And sometimes it's like, hey, is that person actually willing to get out of the limelight a little bit? Maybe you had that person that loves working 60 hours a week and doing all the things, like that only scales so far.
Yeah.
So being, as you grow, like when we started our AEM practice, we basically just had a group of developers. I mean, we didn't even call people architects at the time because we were so small, it didn't matter. But over time, as we've grown, it's like, okay, we need to separate our developers and architects. And then we got a path from developer to architect. But, that was the start of a path. But then even then, it's like, well, what happens if I get to architect? Am I kind of stuck? Because what's beyond that? There's only the practice lead after that, or, and because we'd be tapping people for business development. And okay, well, architects kind of do that. We just kind of mix all the things together because that's what you have to do when you're small. Yep. But as you start getting larger, starting to differentiate some of the roles, and without getting into the details of the different roles that we've created at Bounteous, I will say it doesn't actually matter what Bounteous has created for the roles because you don't have to do it the way that we did it. One of the biggest things that I'm a huge proponent of is rewarding value delivered over anything else. And when you start focusing on what value does this person bring to the table, you start thinking about things like, what, if they're bringing more value here than they are in terms of their client work on an individual basis, we charge them out at X amount of dollars an hour, but they could provide this value across the entire team. We should make that a position.
Yeah.
And so just that mentality alone will help you start evolving your leadership structure that you're going to need as you start getting bigger. Now those will be some of your specialized roles. I think there's still some very basics that you want to make sure you have in place. Number one, making sure everybody's got a personal career coach, somebody that they can go to that, hey, they can express to them, hey, I'm ready to make the next jump. I'm ready. How do I go from junior developer to senior developer? How to go from senior developer to now an architect? Because there's some definite big jumps there in terms of like people skills and such. And mentoring people through that, not just kind of saying, well, when you get there someday, we'll do it. Now, I'm very much a proponent of not promoting people into a position that they haven't shown that they can do it, because that's a recipe for disaster and a miserable life where somebody knows that they're not meeting the grade and comes to work every day scared. Yeah. But there's ways that with a career coach, you can kind of help them say, okay, we know that you need some client interaction skills to be able to effectively do the architect job. We think you got all the technical skills. So what we need you to do is on your current project, let's work with the architect. Let's break off just a certain piece of that where you're kind of going to serve as the architect, and we'll have you interact with the client, and we'll make sure that you can do all the things. So I think having a personal career coach can help very much cater to each individual and make sure that their areas where they need to grow can be addressed, because everybody's a little bit different. Going back to making sure we see people as people. People are very unique. It's not just a step A, B, C. You check mark this box. You get this certification. I had this discussion with Tom all the time. He knows what I think about certifications. They're meaningless in terms of what value you can bring to the table. Now, they're not meaningless in terms of do you know and understand a technology at its base level, but they are meaningless in terms of you should never be using that as your way of, okay, now we're going to promote you to architect because you took an architect test and says that you're an architect. It's far more than that, right?
Yeah.
So the career coach can really help with that. Internal programs like Lunch and Learns, like a lot of people do, labs where we actually do hands-on training. Those are good. A lot of that's table stakes. A lot of places are doing that. But in one area that's maybe a little bit higher investment, but it's super important, is making sure your internal tooling is good so that, yes, the tooling sometimes, like for instance, we've got Activate here at Bounteous. We use that for selling AEM projects, but it's not specifically for selling. It's actually how we help our internal folks know how to do things the right way every time, the Bounteous way. It serves many purposes. Now, that takes a lot of investment. There's a lot of things you do need to spend some time, and some of your best and brightest need to be putting their ideas to get that thing rolling down the right path and making sure that it doesn't diverge from it. But that, ultimately, the reason why you want to have something like that is you don't want to have silos of like, oh, here in my team, those are the commerce people. If we get an AEM commerce project, it's got to be those people. And if we get stuff with the dispatcher, if we get stuff with infrastructure, like, oh, you got to have those three people, because those are the only people that touch the dispatcher and understand how the caching works. And if we're going to do some, community stuff with user generated content, you got to get these, because especially when you're small, those people aren't going to be available. Yeah. They're going to be on a project. They're going to be stuck. And being able to enable all teams to do all things. Now, they might not all be as proficient at it, but the goal is that, hey, you know what? Nothing's off limits. We're going to give you the right tools and the right mentorship. We're going to structure the teams in the way that the right leadership is structured onto each different team so that anybody can do that work. We're all smart technologists. We don't need to segregate who does what. And then definitely mixing your teams regularly. Definitely when projects roll off at Bounteous, we don't really try to keep that team together and roll onto a new team. I've seen companies that try to do that because that team's going to gel and work really well together. You don't know when somebody is going to get this amazing opportunity to go do a startup or something and leave the company and break that team up. It's such a short-sighted, way of doing things. In my opinion, you want all people to be able to work with all people. And so that mixing up of folks, and it helps people then see where they've got weaknesses. Maybe on a project they were on, there was somebody that was super strong at a certain type of coding, and so they did all that piece of the project. Well, then the next project, you mix up the teams differently, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, nobody's really super strong at that yet. great, I'm going to pick that up.
Yeah.
So there's so many reasons why you want to do that. So again, building these things into naturally how you do your work, it's simple things, but it's so easy to go off and go to the short path of, you know what, I'm going to do this project here. I'm going to throw all my seniors at this project. Well, then what are you going to do when the next project comes along?
Yeah.
And those people are all locked up on that client, and then the client's telling you, well, but if we lose so and so, everybody's gonna die, you know, because like everybody thinks that one person, you know, that they lose them. You have to figure out ways where those people can expand their reach beyond a single project and actually deliver value to your entire team. And there's many ways you can do that. And I won't necessarily go into the ways that we've done all that at Bounteous, but that's the mentality, is how do I, you know, in fact, even promotion beyond a certain point should be predicated on, okay, you're doing really good on a single project. That's great. You're doing your job as we hired you, and we're going to promote you to a certain level. But at some point it becomes, how are you actually affecting more than just your project? And that's, you know, and make sure you have avenues for that to happen, making sure you're rewarding the people that do that. And those are the people that eventually become your leaders. And you'll be amazed what you can do in a handful of years if you just take a step forward in that direction each day.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good way of looking at it as well, that especially in the world that we live in this Adobe world, where, like you said, if someone's engaged in a project, it's not a case that you can just hop on LinkedIn and find the perfect person to just jump into the team and fill that space. So that's a really great way of looking at it, and great advice for any team that I suppose can rotate that team around and give everyone the ability to become a very well-rounded professional, not just a specialist. I mean, there's obviously a way that the way the world works and the way careers work, that someone will just be great at one area, but having the ability to kind of go into different routes as well is really useful. And that leads quite nicely on to, I suppose, the way that you mentioned that builds out future leaderships as well. And ultimately, well, I suppose that's covered off a lot of the topics that we wanted to talk about. And there was a couple of questions I had around that, which we can slowly just cover off as well. But on the hiring side, so how do you look at, because we know the AEM world is tough to hire in and it's difficult. The way that I typically look at it, as you really have 4 areas of when you would look at someone's skill or looking to hire them. That would be ultimately in the center, the role related knowledge, the knowledge that they need on day one to sit and do that job. And then you would have other areas such as just general cognitive ability, or kind of the way that that person thinks and can adapt to different situations, then their leadership, and then obviously the culture side of it, how they would fit in. Is there any way that, I know that you've been very successful in bringing people in and growing that into there, but is there any way that you've kind of changed that process or changed the hiring process to kind of increase the ability, or something that you've maybe done differently to ensure that you found great people?
You know, I think you hit on all the high points. I think it's just the level that we do it. You know, folks that have been brought into Bounteous probably realize we've got a pretty strenuous, I shouldn't say strenuous, but lengthy interview process. And you get to meet a lot of amazing people at Bounteous, but I mean, we're hitting folks from all different directions. It's the AEM ability, the ability to do the coding and work in AEM. Again, that's table stakes, right? You can look at somebody's resume, see they worked on some projects. You probably get a good feel that, they could probably at least do the work. And of course, we're going to drill them on some of those types of abilities. But it really is digging to that next level, and having folks that are doing the work being part of that process of interviewing and asking questions that they'll only have a good answer to this if they actually ran into this. And this is my whole gripe with certifications and such is, great, you're able to answer a test, you know the basics of how this tool works. You've probably done at least some limited amount of work in the tool. So you've got the basics, but do you know how to solve the hard problem? Do you know a lot of times I ask a question and I'll even tell people in the interviewing process, I actually don't care so much as what your answer is, because there's a lot of, I actually care about how you got to that answer. I want you to talk me through what things you thought about that led to that answer, because frankly, there might actually be two valid, completely different answers to the same question given different context.
Yeah.
And so really digging into like, how does this person think through the problem? Do they understand at a deeper level? You know, and some of that is just going to make sure that you're bringing people in at the right level. So you're going to have people come in and say, hey, I'm an architect. And you ask them things like, you know, I think you're a mid-level developer, you know, or vice versa. You might have somebody coming in that's interviewing as mid-level developer. You'd be like, wow, this person, I mean, yeah, they got some coding things that they can still get better at. And yeah, they've only been in the industry for 3 or 4 years, but that I could tell the way this person thinks, the way they answer questions, how they debug that problem, you know, scenario-based questions rather than, hey, how do you write how do you write a OSGI service in AEM? What's the syntax? I can Google that stuff. I mean, if people knew how much of our work we got done by Googling, they'd be far less impressed with us, right? But it's because it's not a matter of knowing how to do it. It's about matter of knowing how to ask the right question and what is it that I should be looking for on Google so that I can get the code.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an art. Interviewing is an art. I think it's a very important skill for a lot of businesses to have. And I know we've said this before, and it's not to go into that topic, but I, as a recruiter, obviously would say that hiring is the most important thing for any company that they can do. And there are many areas to that, but I suppose staying on topic with the remote working side, as a business hiring during this era and that we are all working remotely at home and you foster an incredible environment of remote working, I suppose, how do you interview? How do you ensure kind of the right fit? Well, I mean, do you just interview solely remote, or do you have, obviously at the moment, I suppose you do, but is it all done remote, and do you hire solely on the remote side?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, frankly, we've done a lot of interviewing remote even before we were all forced to be remote. I think, you know, if you're looking to build an AEM practice, you know, in these technologies that just have smaller groups of people that are able and available to do the work and even open to a recruitment, you know, you're really limiting down already who you can go, who you can actually approach. The worst thing you can do is say, and it has to be somebody in a convenient location for us. And so just because our mentality has always been, we're going to find the best wherever you live, we're going to find you. You know, it just didn't make it feasible always to do things. Now, usually, you know, before we were all forced to be remote, we would try to at least do a final interview in person, because there's still, Zoom is great. You know, we're face to face now, but it's still, there's nothing like shaking somebody's hand and, you know, talking across a real table. So we absolutely would incorporate that into the interviewing process, but we've frankly done a lot of remote recruiting for as long as I've been here, just to make sure that we're open to and predicated on hiring the best people wherever they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll be really interesting to see where we go in the future with the whole community side of it. I know you've got big plans in terms of growth, and with a lot of businesses have, as well as how remote working will come into a lot of that. I mean, are there any points that I suppose you feel we haven't covered or you'd like to go into a little bit more detail? Because I think it's been great at the moment for what we've discussed.
No, I mean, I think we've pretty well covered things. Like as I said earlier, some of this is HR 101. It's just that much more important in the EAM space. It's not an easy space to break into, but it's obviously possible. I mean, we did it, right? Like, so, you know, and I will say, you know, we always thought we were going to make it, and that's the way that you got to be going into it. Like having that core of people that there's no doubt that we're going to make it. This isn't just, we're not experimenting here. We're going to go for this, and then being willing to make those hard decisions and those investments. And, you know, like I said, there's a time and place, the different ways you need to hire, and being open to all the different paths, because it's going to be a little bit of a rocky start with the small teams. but you can get through it. And as you get larger, it frankly gets easier.
Yeah.
So, there is a light at the end of the tunnel for folks that are looking to build teams, but definitely make sure you're prepared for the challenge, so you're not going to go halfway down the road and then when it gets hard, quit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, I really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions and things like that come up afterwards, and we can always sit down and cover them off as well. But obviously from my side, thank you very much for taking the time to talk over this. We will certainly catch up afterwards, and then hopefully we'll get this out shortly.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Awesome. Amazing. Thanks, Brett. I'll speak to you soon.